They still go on. They've become more stealthy. We have them, we don't even know it. And that is one of the more scary pieces of this. By switching from people getting kicks out of messing with your websites and doing the DDoS attacks on you, of course, it's more now people are in it for financial gain. So we say it's mafia driven. There's a lot of the crime element. The financial institution is being hit. And when they are hit, guess what? They don't like to tell you about it. It's an embarrassment. They don't want their customers alerted. And right, as the way things are going for banks and companies today, the least attention that they can get, the better off that they are. So they're still there. They're just hiding in a different form. Data, the next frontier. I've been preaching data for about 5 years. You know, stop and think about it. It's all about the data. If you start at the data, the lifeblood of any organization or of any system or application, that's the thing that keeps you going. That's what you sell. That's data about what you have. So you have to have a handle on that. It's your most critical asset. So no matter how it's defined, personal identifiable data, intellectual property, privacy, it all needs to be protected in its own particular way. And that's where the difficulty comes in. One size does not fit all. In the government, we had classifications of about 53 different kinds of PI, as we called it. And each of those had to be categorized, tagged, and appropriately filed. So when we write our software, we should know at least what it's intended to protect. There should be the connections between the people that are going to be using that. How important is the data? We create almost 2 exabytes of data a year, and it's doubling every 12 months. Now maybe 80% of that is spam, but it's still out there. Somebody still has to deal with it. So the real question is, what are we going to do with all that stuff? Where are you going to get the people to sort it, categorize it, determine how important it is, which part of it needs to be in which layer of your database, and just how much access do you allow to that? If you're looking at that from the eyes of just the individual coder, it's certainly, in my opinion, unfair to expect them to know or read your mind about what it is you're trying to accomplish with that without an exhaustive amount of information interchange on it. It's estimated that a record lost in US dollars is somewhere between 50 and 200. I won't stand here and try to defend that number. If you do the math on TJ Maxx's loss, for example, you'll find out that loss should have cost them in the billions of dollars. Well, it really didn't. I think it cost them, at least what was reported, about $215 million. I mean, a mere $215 million, right? Pocket change. We experienced in the government the loss of an item, the infamous Veterans Administration laptop. Everybody heard about that? Yep. How many of you are veterans and got a letter from the VA? Right. Thank you, sir. Fortunately, that laptop was found, and there was no evidence that there was any breach on that laptop. But what would you think it cost the Veterans Administration just in losing that laptop with not a single person breached, no identity loss? It's $126 million. When you send 26 million letters to veterans, take the postage. And just as a simple example, there was a requirement to provide, identity monitoring, credit monitoring reports. It costs you about $29.95. Do the math and it starts multiplying up. And companies are under that same burden. So You don't have to actually be exploited in order to cost you money. But who pays for that? Do software companies pay for that? Well, in that particular case, they couldn't help losing a laptop. They couldn't help that the guy didn't encrypt it. So their software was really not maintained or managed in a secure fashion. So, but a lot of times they get the blame and the credit for that. So we say weaknesses in software is like weaknesses, or like the weakness in a lock on a safe. That lock depends on how big it is. I mean, how big a lock do you want to put on your data? How important is the data determines what the size of that lock. And then there are indirect weaknesses as well. I keep thinking of, I'm sure this happened in New York, in Washington, the parking meter issues. People will figure out how to steal just about anything. The thieves would wait until dark, of course, and you'd think a parking meter is safe. How are you going to get the quarters out of there, really? Well, they take a pipe cutter, go around and just cut the heads off of the meters, pull them in the back of a truck, and they just about wiped out the parking meters in D.C. And I suspect most large cities run into that same problem. So now all you see in many places are just these little steel stumps and conduits. Comical in a way. The insider threat. 51% of employers believe that their internal employees are the biggest threat to their information. I've seen estimates that it's even larger than that. I've seen it as high as 70%. So what's that got to do with software? How can software help that? How do insiders get into the information? Good software, if it's thought through, will have ways of telling who has been into the data, who offloaded it, who put it on a thumb drive. They'll have logs that, if we use them, and if those logs are turned on, and if we have people who know how to read them, we can tell who those insiders are in many cases in doing that. Just an example of just internal checks and balances that can go on that. The financial loss, the reputational damage, in play. I mean, you guys know all of the downsides and all of the embarrassment that comes by being exploited and losing someone's data. If you notice the articles in the media just loves to pound on it's the personal. It's how it affects the individual, the person who's about to have their credit cards and social security numbers distributed and sold in packages over the internet, whether exploited or not. Now this is the last point is one I found. I think that came from a Fortify white paper, but estimated that 88% of disgruntled IT employers were high risk for data theft or destruction. That is an astounding number. So I guess what that means is don't tick off your network administrator. Look what happened in San Francisco. Now, if you stop and think, I bet any one of you in here could figure out how to have avoided that San Francisco situation. And some of it could have been in the software end of it. Some of it could have been in management, controlled access, division of duties, and those type of techniques. But those things generally cost additional money.